Good morning from Washington, D.C.
The five-member panel of experts painted a complicated picture of countries in a region that have struggled to find lasting stability. Add to that, countries like China, Russia, Turkey, and the United States, among others, play their own role in either to help or some might say complicate things. Rare earth minerals have every country's interest, and water access from the Red Sea, the Nile River, and the Gulf of Aden have Africa's focus. In Sudan, a country at war with millions of people being displaced and starving and in need of constant aid, where is that going? Khaloud Kher is the founder and director of Confluence Advisory and says history indicates wars like Sudan have a trajectory of 20 years and that it's only been about 3 years so far.
And even if the war doesn't last 20 years, we have, unfortunately, a set of actors that have now mushroomed. We have, rather than two main belligerent actors what we started with in April of 2023, or four really, if you count the non-signatories to the peace agreement, we now have maybe a dozen, maybe more. And this makes it extremely difficult for outside actors to try and corral these groups together.
Add to that the rift between Ethiopia and Somalia after Ethiopia signed a non-binding agreement with the breakaway Republic of Somaliland last year. Michael Woldemariam, associate professor at the University of Maryland, says there are solutions to be had, but reinvigorating a regional peace initiative would be a start.
I think we need a region-wide conversation, one that's actually trans-regional, right? That brings the African side of the Red Sea and the Middle Eastern side of the Red Sea together to dialogue about the ways in which various conflicts across the region can be de-escalated.
Woldemariam says the U.S. can and should play a role because they have the capabilities and relationships with everyone in the region, except perhaps Eritrea. But the new administration is recalibrating its foreign policy, and until President Trump selects African envoys, the best guess for U.S. engagement today lies in its recent involvement, according to Laurent Cloche-Blanchard, a specialist in African affairs at the Congressional Research Service.
At the very end of Congress, we saw legislation passed to require the next administration to appoint another special envoy for Sudan. How quickly the Trump administration will move on that is not yet clear.
As the Sudan continues to percolate, so do the tensions between Eritrea and Ethiopia. Alan Boswell, project director for the Horn of Africa at the International Crisis Group, says what used to be the anchor of regional stability between Ethiopia and Kenya is different with the rise of Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Since the Tigray War, there's still an ongoing insurgency in Oromia and another in the Amhara region. Then there's a bitter dispute, he says, with Egypt over building the Grand Renaissance Ethiopian Dam, a big concern for Egypt.
I was just in Cairo last week, and I'll say that for the Egyptians, it's no longer about just that dam. It's also now about what they fear will be future dams by the Ethiopians and by recent ratification by upstream countries of the Nile Basin Initiative, which it considers a threat. And then on top of all that, there's been very escalating tensions with Eritrea.
Boswell feels the tensions between Ethiopia and Eritrea could lead to civil war, and the percolating situation in Sudan is not helping.
We could see it merge with the war in Sudan if it's still going on, and we would undoubtedly see a proxy war among allied Middle Eastern powers over this as well. It could destabilize not just the region, but the Red Sea as well. It's a very worrying possibility.
The control of water has its own challenges, but beyond that, Boswell says talk of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, of replacing the dollar with blockchain technology is another thing to watch, as the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians wondering what impact such a change would mean to them. Nonetheless, with so much instability, Woldemariam says for the U.S. to be more effective in bringing stability, experience has shown that special envoy offices need to be structured in the right way so there are resources with enough staffing to handle the complex arrangements with so many different countries.
They need lines of connection and communication with top levels of the State Department, the White House, to be able to mobilize the U.S. government. I mean, you just don't want them on an island doing their thing without the kind of senior level support that's necessary. So the structure of that effort needs some attention.
Philip Alexiou, VOA News, Washington.